Welcome everyone to this week's Pulse Maharashtra with me, Vinaya Deshpande. I'm the Maharashtra Chief of Bureau of the Hindu, and each week we take you through some of the most important stories that affect the state. And this week we have Anand Teltumbde, who's a renowned intellectual, author and human rights activist. At a time when Bihar faces polls at a crucial stage and Maharashtra is going to face the local body elections within the next few days, his recent book, The Caste Census, speaks about the caste conundrum, the caste census which has been announced, and the kind of implications that it is going to have on the Indian polity. We are going to approach this and look at it from Maharashtra perspective in the beginning as to how it is going to affect the caste battles that are being waged in the state, maybe between the Marathas and the Kunbis, the OBC reservation issue, the Dhangars coming up and asking for reservations. How are all these issues going to affect the upcoming elections, and why does he call the caste census a con?
Then next during 24 election, when actually caste census demand had reached crescendo, so Modi came out, not once or twice, etc. He actually termed his demand as an urban naxal demand. But suddenly on 30th April this year, the entire volte face happens. India was never casteized as it is today. When the BJP came to power, the international community now declared almost that Indian data are not reliable. They are not giving any credence to Indian data. People are naked before the state, but the state is completely opaque to people. It should have been reverse. Bihar election, Modi found himself in an awkward position because Nitish Kumar has been his ally, and Nitish Kumar had conducted the successful caste survey in Bihar. Reservation is not a panacea. Reservation is actually a very, very tricky kind of policy which needed so much of a care to in application. But these people have casually used reservation and in course of time weaponized it. Caste is a notion. Caste is no notion. It splits like amoeba. There is no kind of boundaries to the caste.
How do you see this conflict, Teltumbdeji? The fact that reservations are given on the basis of caste, and yet there is no reliable data when it comes to caste census. The fact that caste itself is such a fluid concept, how do you look at the contradictions and the fluidities here?
Basically, you have to understand a caste census is not just a data business, but it's the politics. Mainly, it's the politics that firstly needed to be understood. So, I was diving at that actually Congress also was not keen on enumerating caste. And as regards BJP has been a party which actually inherit the ideology of RSS, which has been against the caste-based reservations per se. And BJP, consistent with that ideological stance, opposed caste census. In 21, they gave an affidavit before Supreme Court, which declared that it is a conscious policy of the government, okay, not to include caste in the general census. And when they see that it's a policy of government, the Supreme Court doesn't have any role in that. Then next during 24 election, when actually caste census demand had reached crescendo, so Modi came out, not once or twice, etc. He actually termed his demand as an urban naxal demand. But suddenly on 30th April this year, the entire volte face happens. So now, if you analyze, there are several reasons for why BJP really agreed for.
Can you give us the top 3 reasons if I ask you? The fact that from the demand of urban naxals to the demand that the BJP government has suddenly taken up, what changed for the BJP to take up caste census?
Firstly, the context, that time probably when, the 24 election results. If you analyze the 24 elections, BJP almost had lost power. If they had not taken support of Nitish Kumar and Chandrababu Naidu, probably they could not have formed the government. There would have been quite a turmoil out there. So they learnt a big lesson, as British learnt in 1857. So what happens? The analysis of the voting data indicates that the upper strata of OBC actually were shifting away from BJP, and the lower strata is stagnant. And one could even see that there is not much of a difficulty saying that upper caste of BJP are relatively more educated, etc., and they can see through the tactics of BJP. But lower strata is something like a devoted constituency to BJP. So BJP learned that they needed to reinforce the lower strata of BJP, and the caste census might really appeal to them because they as a caste are going to get their share of the power or share of representation, etc. That is one. Second thing, in the context of Bihar election, Bihar election, Modi found himself in an awkward position because Nitish Kumar has been his ally, and Nitish Kumar had conducted the successful caste survey in Bihar. If he actually persists with that kind of opposition to caste census, it would go quite odd with the Bihar populace. So there he had to patch up some way. So there was no other patch up than the rising demand for caste census about thing. Third thing is that the entire opposition actually put its all legs in the one single basket in caste census. So if some way BJP actually comes with the caste census, it would prick the balloon. So that is a third thing. And fourth thing, and more importantly, it's a long term thing, but more importantly, one should see through their kind of strategy. Caste census in all likelihood is going to come out with the pervasive inequality across caste, intra-caste inequality, I'm meaning. So one could actually create narrative in course of time that these caste-based reservations are not worked, and therefore what we mean in equality terms is basically these kinds of income inequality. So the narrative could be constructed that the caste-based reservation should be abolished. The time has come to abolish it and institute an economic-based equality. They already seeded it in the form of EWS in 1923. So they 1919, I think. So that these are you wanted three reasons. I have given four, I think, and there are many more.
But then, there's a clear contradiction here, right? From a party which believed in the economically backward classes, you see that playing out in Maharashtra as well, where this reservation category has come up, to a party which says that caste census is important. Do you see contradiction there? And how do you see that fitting with the BJP's ideology of Hindutva? What have you said in your book about it?
No, see, BJP's position, it is quite confident because whatever opportunity that comes, opposition every time has been failing to create a proper narrative that appeals to people, and BJP actually has been using even the odd things with them been getting converted into something like a plus for this when they construct the narrative. So BJP is very confident that whatever caste data comes out, they would that would be used for constructing a narrative of what favors their long-term policy. So they are not hazy now. Once they have decided, they would go with that.
How does that sit with the annihilation of caste? How does that sit with equitable distribution? How does that sit with social justice?
See, caste census, I would say, does not have anything to do with equitability, etc. It is just a con. That is the big con, because inequalities, etc., beyond caste census. So I will explain that caste census is what is the likely outcome of caste census. Caste census is going to enumerate what castes are placed in terms of numbers, in terms of their position in educational or economic strata. So these kinds of data are going to produce. It is not something like a magic wand. So there is something happened during 90s, 91, that we adopted neoliberal policies, etc. And these demands were basically twin reaction to the neoliberal order that came into India, which Neoliberal order meaning the order which actually dismantle public goods, withdrawal of state from its welfare is role, and and what uh, and concentrated wealth, and created an all-round crisis, the sans
Jobless
class
growth.
crisis across class, even including dominant class, because dominant class also face agrarian distress and a neoliberal exclusion, because neoliberalism actually privileges up the urban capital and something like upper middle class service elites, etc., which induces the feeling of relative deprivation and the dominant rural caste. In course of time, these people firstly neglected, education, etc., but their wards and children got educated and faced the blank wall because there are no jobs. It is jobless growth that has been happening. The employment elasticity of GDP has been drastically reduced during the neoliberal times. The world over, this is the phenomena in a way, not confined to India. So these kinds of things actually brought in the solution of caste enumeration. This demand actually arose from those kinds of things. But if you look at it, it cannot address the inequalities in things. Even subcategorization as regards the low caste are concerned, the reservation caste are concerned, it doesn't solve any problem, because arbitrarily you actually have a combinatorial exercise and say that okay, this A, B, C, D group is going to get something like according to their population ratio 7, 8, 3 or 1, etc. This is no solution, because tomorrow the constituents of that combination again would say that these people have uh, usurped or monopolized all the benefits and we want again subcategorized. So logically you would have to reduce to something like an individual caste, and caste is a notion. Caste is no notion, it splits like amoeba. There is no kind of boundaries to the caste.
But then what is the solution, Mr.
There is no
Teltumbde? Are you saying that there should be no caste census? Are you saying that there should be an opposition to this very expensive national exercise? How would we get a realistic picture of the categories, subcategories, or how the society looks realistically otherwise?
See, solution nobody speaks. It's a way of deflection the attention from the basic things that has been a bane of India, Indian development in India and during the post-colonial days. So that should be firstly understood by people like us. So solution lay in basic kind of capacity building of people when India became freedom in terms of something like providing equal quality education to all. I'm not meaning only the deprived communities, so-called historically oppressed communities, etc. It should have been done to all the people. Some basic capacity building should have happened. And then only you can read something like some communities needing extra, and to them the social justice, etc. In this form. I'm not very enamored with reservation, etc. But in this form is needed, and then it could have succeeded. But without that, nobody talks about these kinds of things: the education, healthcare, and the livelihood security to all people. That should have been done. India is Indian governance has been so much deficit in redistributive terms, and nobody pays attention to that. Land, for instance, land distribution in this country has been so skewed that probably there might be a scarce parallel to this kind of thing, but it occurs to no one, and people also in course of time have forgotten the demand. So the solutions are there. Solutions are, it's not a solution in terms of reservation. Reservation is not a panacea. Reservation is actually a very, very tricky kind of policy which needed so much of a care to in application. But these people have casually used reservation and in course of time weaponized it, so that actually India stands as the most casteized country. I would say that in my own terms, there's no rhetoric, but India was never casteized uh, as it is today. So probably when so much people's money is being spent on caste census. The I would doubt that whether we are going to derive as much returns from that. So it's a wasteful exercise in that sense. But as a data, I would welcome, because I consume data. Data is a raw material for our things. So anything can be done with data, but when you talk about data, when most people when support they support, so their point would be, their contention would be that why you're against data. But nobody is against data, but what has happened to data in this country is before us, you know all kinds of data are available. Actually, India stood a very respectful position in Committee of Nations, that our institutions and our data extraction systems, etc., were being respected. But during this 10, 11 years, like when the BJP came to power, the, the international community now declared almost that Indian data are not reliable. They are not giving any credence to Indian data. Now, all the state has amass huge data. Like people are naked before the state, but the state is completely opaque to people. It should have been reverse. Whatever is state doing, that data should be available to people so that people could ask relevant questions. That is not available. People are naked to them. There is huge surveillance, there is Aadhaar data, there are all kinds of things. There is nothing that a individual does here is not known to state. So this kind of scenario, and this is the way the data are being used. So what is so big about the caste data? Caste data is already it's a political move. It is born of a politics, and it is going to be used for politics. There is nothing, no possibility of that is going to be used for really people's empowerment.
When you say that, you're saying data is important and you would welcome that the caste census happens, that the data comes to people. What do you think should happen with data so that the caste census becomes a meaningful exercise?
You see, I don't need to explain that the caste census is a tool of visibility. It only gives something like a diagnostic snapshot as to how much inequality exists within caste and all those kinds of things. Uh, Something like Professor Deshpande you referred to, like said a selfie. But how much, what people casually take selfies, but this selfie is going to cost a huge lot of public money. So then the considerations come whether the likely returns are commensurate with the expenses. Okay, so after the data gets available through census exercise, then there are lot many steps, and no steps actually is devoid of politics. If we deal with the big data, etc. So first of the step is something like you visualize the visualization of data, as to you have something like hypothesis in mind, and accordingly you hypothesize. It's a political process. Data cleaning comes after that, and then thereafter something like a processing state. I'm not going to get into technicalities, but all these kinds of things are there is a political element when we deal with something like business data, etc. But those also even is not devoid of politics. So these things should be borne in mind. And it's something like a medical report. Your diagnostics is done, and medical report comes and says that, oh, you have this vitamin deficiency or this, that, etc. But doctor needs to look at it and something like take steps thereafter. In this context, it would be something like a political will to use that data for some practical purpose. For instance, if a really pro-people government is in place, it would get something like shocked with the data, that our people are really so much of inequality exists and so much of a thing. And it is something like people not to be necessarily counted in terms of caste. So what is needed? Why are they lacking in education? Why are they lacking in skills? Why are they lacking in? Why are they so precarious about the livelihood things? What? So all these kind of things would be a lesson to them to bring in these kinds of measures, redistributive measures, not necessarily reservations, not necessarily that social justice. Actually, let me say, these people actually conflict caste census with social justice. It is not a social justice; it's a data justice. Okay, that okay. There is a difference between two. When state withdraws from welfare consciously, what remains of justice is only representation, and representation, who is placed what, etc., becomes something like politically very crucial.
It's an extremely complicated gamut, which I think we will need another half an hour to sit and decode with respect to social justice and data justice. But let me bring you to an issue which is more pertinent to where we are sitting. We are in Mumbai. Maharashtra is going to face the local body elections sooner now. How do you see this whole caste issue playing up in Maharashtra, especially for the last 1 year or more? We've been constantly seeing agitations, protests by several groups. Maybe the Maratha Kunbi conflict, maybe the issue with respect to OBC reservation that is being demanded, maybe the Dhangars now who have been wanting and who we have seen have been regularly protesting over the last few years for reservation. How do you see this whole issue playing out in Maharashtra with respect to caste reservation?
Anyway, caste census is not going to happen before these civic
Yes,
elections in
but it
Maharashtra.
will certainly be a poll issue.
But Maharashtra is a caste cauldron in that sense. When more than any other state, perhaps there is so much of things happening around caste reservations. Maharashtra situation in many ways is different from other states too. So what is happening is there is something like a very dominant caste Maratha, and without any kind of enumeration, probably it is taken for granted it's a majority caste. It's not. The OBCs, like Kunbis, like Malis, Dhangars, all those kinds of things, the only dominant caste, but there are hundreds of other castes which actually included in OBC, might be more than a Maratha. Definitely are more than Maratha, but they are relatively voiceless. So, what is likely to happen, and not in short term, again, I'm stressing, likely to happen, and there is going to be an awareness created among these OBCs that we are not a mean number, okay, and we ought to have got the share because these people have fooled us, the Marathas, etc., have fooled us. Most parties, you see the combination. Now, NCP is clearly something like a Maratha party. Okay, they would instigate Kunbis, sometimes they would say that Maratha ought to get reservation as Kunbis. And when it is convenient, then Kunbis itself becomes Maratha. So, so these things are going on. Dhangars, there have been a standing demand to be included in ST. So they said that there is no difference between the scheduled tribes actually, and they were also pastoral people earlier, so nomadic pastoral people just settled down. That doesn't make any big sense in social terms. So that has been their contention. So all these people are going to get support from likely this caste census, and their demands would there. Other parties, Congress is again a hodgepodge party. So it is not really based on anything and any caste equations, but really difficult situation would be Shiv Senas. These two Shiv Senas are going to be, because they transcend something like caste, and the quasi-Hindutva or quasi-Hindu, that has been their game plan. So they are going to be endangered, by this kind of caste census or enumeration policy. So in Maharashtra, these are kind of things one could speculate about. But when the data comes, the specific things would be based on the data.
But then, the OBCs have traditionally been a strong vote bank of the BJP. How these things play out, especially with respect to the reservation demands that are being made, will the OBCs feel sidelined?
Yes, yes, I missed out OBC, but the most dominant party in Maharashtra has been now emerging as BJP. So, and I missed out. Sorry for that. But what happens is that these enumeration is going to endanger likewise BJP too, because it's something like a bigger Shiv Sena or something like an Hindutva plank. BJP's game plan has been assimilating caste and giving them something like a religious identity that they are Hindus and pitching them against Muslims. That has been their game plan, and they have been fairly successful. So what is going to happen is if these people OBCs see their numbers, so they are going to say that I am not getting enough. We are not placed to get our share, and these people have been fooling us. So there could be a tendency induced that no, we are not part of this Hindutva, etc. Let it go to the hell. Promise us our own representation according to our population share. So this kind of demand could be uh, sort of pushed with the data.
Mr. Teltumbde, it has been an extremely interesting conversation, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your time and giving me an opportunity.